Well, I'll start with my story and the story that inspired the sit for this morning while you all find a comfy seat and a good place to be. So, yeah, so this morning's sit is going to be inspired by dogs. I went for a run this morning, and as I was, so there's a spot, I'll try and paint the picture of the scene. So I'm coming down, I'm coming like out of the boardwalk area, so it's like the big nature preserve area. And there's some trees kind of maybe over here. And then there's a road that like comes, and then this road is like this huge hill that comes down, and then it comes to a stop. And on the other side of the road is a house. There's just like one house at the bottom of the hill, which always seems crazy because it's such a steep hill and like the house is right there. Anyway, that house has dogs that often bark, when I walk by or anyone walks by. And so I've gotten used to them. I've gotten used to hearing them and knowing kind of who they are and their whole jam. And they're just a couple golden retrievers. So they're harmless, whatever. They just make a lot of noise. But today, as I was walking out, I hadn't yet come through the trees to see the big hill. And the dogs were just going nuts. And they were inside the house and they were just going nuts. And I thought, I don't think that's for me. Like, that's way more intense than they usually bark for a person walking by. And so I thought, I wonder what's going on. And then I could hear all of a sudden this like, the sound is like a big truck comes down the hill. And then it just dawned on me. I thought, I bet you that truck makes deliveries at their house and those dogs know that truck. And so then as soon as the truck came to it, I waited because I knew it was a big truck coming down the hill. I didn't want to obviously get hit by it. So I waited, and the dogs were still barking, 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 and the truck came, and then I saw it was Crystal Rock. We have Crystal Rock water around here, and it turned the corner and then it backed right into their driveway. And the lady came out of the house. She's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, my dogs are barking, blah, 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 blah." And I was like, those dogs totally know that truck. They know that delivery guy. He probably comes like, I don't know how often they have their deliveries, and whether the dogs like it or not, I don't know, but those dogs knew that truck. And so it just got me thinking about like how well we know the sounds around us, and the ones that we become really familiar with, like those dogs did, and also like I did, like I was able to pinpoint that like that dog bark was not for me, that there was something in the level of its intensity that was just not associated with me. And so again, it's like where bird language can really come into play with more than just birds, it's like we can listen to our own dogs, our chickens, our whatever, the squirrels in our backyard, and they can tell us a lot about what's happening. So that was a little primer for today, the story that inspired our sit. So for those of you, I know we have a lot of new folks. I put a little post up in my last newsletter to let folks know about this bird sit. So for anyone who's new, welcome. Thank you for coming. And the way we roll with this is I always ask people if you can turn your monitor or your screen on, because it's so nice to see your faces. During the sit, it's not quite as important because, it doesn't, you're going to be focusing on your environment, not on me. But afterward, if you want to stay after for a chat, which we often do, it's just nice to see your faces. So that's number one. Number two is that I just ask folks to find a comfortable place to sit. So you can either stay inside or outside. Doesn't matter. A lot of folks choose to be outside if the weather's good. If you're inside, if you can position yourself close to a window and crack that window so you can hear what's going on. Some days we'll focus on our hearing, some days our eyesight. It just depends. Today's going to be a little bit more with our ears. And if you can't open your window today, that's just fine. You can just, as long as you can see outside, you can also use the sounds indoors. We often play with those. Even the sounds of your refrigerator, your air conditioning unit, you can use those as practice. So go ahead and find a comfortable place to sit or stand. We even had one woman join us last year in her kayak every week. So whatever it is your preference. It doesn't matter. And let's see, I will make sure that during our sit, so we'll have some times of silence during the sit and some times where I'm guiding you. And so during the times of silence, I'm going to mute myself so that you don't have to hear me, or you don't have to hear all of my own sounds behind. So yeah, go ahead and find a comfortable place to sit and we'll get started. It's good to see everyone. Good to see some new faces as well. It's really nice to have folks join us today. All right, so now that you're in your seated position, if you do need to move around, that is the time where I just ask if you can turn your monitor off if you're moving, but if you're seated, that's great. So let's just notice what's happening in your own body right now. So you might have a lot of buzziness going on inside of you. You might already be pretty calm and grounded, but just take stock of what is happening for you in this moment. What's the rhythm of your heartbeat right now? How shallow or deep is your breath? And now, with some attention onto your body, just notice your feet. Whatever they're touching, if they're touching the earth, that's wonderful. If they're touching your deck floor or your inside home floor, somewhere beneath that floor is the earth. And I just want you to tap into your connection right now with the earth. Some people can feel something and other people may not, and that's okay. It doesn't really matter what comes up for you, but just make the attempt. And now go ahead and we're going to give some attention to our eyes right now. So go ahead and find something off in the distance to focus your attention on. So try and look about as far as you can see, but still where you can pinpoint one item. So maybe it's a branch of a tree, or maybe it's a piece of bark. It might be a window in a distant house. Whatever it is, just focus on that one point right now. And then after you've been focusing for a moment, allow your eyes to soften, allow your vision to become soft and even fuzzy, so that you're going to expand your vision wider and wider and wider. So you're still looking forward at that one point, but you're allowing everything to become soft in your peripheral vision. Some people call this owl eyes, some people call it soft vision, splatter vision. I've heard all different kinds of terms for this. Just let your eyes get nice and soft, and then just notice what you start to perceive. Notice what comes into your awareness when you start to soften your gaze. And some people even become aware of their own bodies a little bit more deeply. And so with your eyes still in the softened gaze, I'll just remind everyone that everything I bring up here today is just an invitation to play. If something calls your attention, if you happen to see something that's really exciting to you, feel free to use your binoculars and look at whatever you're seeing. This is all just an experience that we're trying on today. And so now we're going to bring our attention to our ears. So if you can keep your eyes in the softened gaze, that's wonderful, for as long as you can. And now shifting your attention to your ears, I want you to focus on first the most prominent sound on your landscape, and just let yourself really absorb that sound without any judgment, if that's possible. Just allow that sound to be, and just notice all the qualities that you can hear in that sound. And after you've spent just a few moments with that sound, let's shift to a different sound, another one that's calling your attention, but maybe not quite so loud. And again, just let yourself really just dive into that sound, all aspects of it. All right, and now I invite you to listen for the sound that is the most quiet on the landscape. And it might even be very close to you. It might even be something within your own body, but just listen for something that's really quiet right now. This is a beautiful practice to help us become more attuned to the natural rhythm of the world around us and really become attentive to the sights, the sounds, the sensations in our own body, what we're picking up on. And I just had an experience, I like to call it a deep dog sigh. So it's where, if you've ever watched a dog who's taking, just laid down for a little bit and it goes, it does that deep sigh. And I think when our bodies become really relaxed, that we have that capacity to have that deep dog sigh. And this practice can help us to feel more grounded and more relaxed. And so I just noticed that my own body just had that sensation of the deep dog sigh. So while you're now in your softened gaze and your ears are picking up all the different layers of sound from the quietest to the loudest on your landscape, let yourself just sort of explore with your ears the land around you. And maybe it's indoors again, and that's okay if it's a sound, if you're not able to hear any outdoor sounds right now, just explore the sounds in your environment. And then when you fall on a particular sound that piques your interest or your curiosity, whether it's a very common sound or one that you're not used to hearing, it doesn't really matter, but just let yourself stay with that one sound for this next little bit. And we're going to keep ourselves as long as you can, as long as that animal or bird or whoever it is stays around, or refrigerator, whatever it might be, as long as that stays around, let yourself really just ask that question of how, and find out, like, do you know who this bird is, this animal, this sound? Do you know the source of the sound? And if you do, ask yourself how you know that. Like, what is it about that sound that really identifies, let's just say, that bird as that one? And so listen for all the aspects, all the qualities, all the pauses, everything about that sound that makes that bird who it is, or that animal, or that tree, whatever it may be. And so I'll just let everyone sit in silence for the next few minutes and just let yourself really sink into that sound. And one thing I will say is that it's okay if you don't know the source of that sound, if you don't know the bird that's making that call, let's say, just do your best to really listen as closely as you can for all the aspects of that sound that make that sound unique on a landscape. Nice work. So you're welcome to stay with that same sound if you're really enjoying the deep dive into that sound. And if you'd like to shift to a new sound on the landscape, you can go ahead and do that now. And again, it really doesn't matter. I'll be speaking about birds just because that's what we're here to do. But if you're listening to something inside your home, just apply whatever I say to the sound that you're hearing at this moment. And now, if you'd like, if the two sounds you were listening to are still continuing on, you can compare those two right now. Or if you have one of the sounds that's continuing on and a new sound, then do your best to compare those two. How are they similar? How are they different? Where are they calling from? How often is their song being made? Is it repetitive? Is there some pauses? Does it feel like a patient bird or a really active bird? I'll let you sit in that for the next few moments. Good work, everybody. So, if one of the sounds that you were listening to is a common sound, let's say you're really familiar with that sound, then do your best to listen for something in that sound that might be new for you. Try and hear something new in that sound, a new quality, not so much different, but just something that you maybe haven't heard before, a way of listening to that song or that sound that it's a new and fresh way to listen to it. You can even imagine that you're 7 years old again. And how would your 7-year-old self be listening to that sound? And for our final moment of the sit, a little bit of time here, let's stick with the 7-year-old theme. And if you were that 7-year-old little one and you're listening to this sound, how might you have a conversation with this bird or whatever it is out there? What, using that bird's or that animal or that tree's language. So not your own voice, not your own words, but using phrases or sounds that are familiar to that bird. How would you have that conversation? How might that sound? Just imagine playing with that. Nice work, everybody. So take the next couple of moments and in your own way, you can offer a sense of appreciation to those that you interacted with today, that were showing up for you in whatever way they were, even if they were inanimate objects. Just offer your sense of gratitude and appreciation for your connection and what you learned from them and whatever else you want to offer to them. All right. Well, that's our practice for today. So folks are welcome to stay and stay along for the chat afterward. If you need to go, that's totally fine. Feel free to do what you need to do. Take care of yourself. Thank you for coming. If you did join, I really love seeing everybody here. And for those who want to stay, would love to hear what your experience was this morning. If you have anything come to you, any experiences that you'd like to share. And I know sometimes people have bird stories that don't apply to today, but for right now, let's just stick with stories from today, from this actual experience. And then if you do want to share, just go ahead and raise your hand if your monitor is on. And if it's not, you can raise your virtual hand and I'll just call on folks. Yeah, go for it, Linda.
Okay. Well, I had it's kind of a question that I've had for a while. When we started the listening, I had 4 or 5 blue jays and some chickadees, couple of juncos, and I don't have bird feeders up right now because of bears. So they're just here to glean what they can from the trees and the grasses. And they were all contentedly doing their thing. And then some magpies came in, very loud, very well, for lack of a better word, they're a little pushy, and they just got into all of the trees, and they first the chickadees left, and then the juncos left, and then finally the blue jays left. And I had noticed that with the bird feeders before I took them down, that I would put the bird feeders up and other birds would come in and everybody seemed to get along, even the blue jays. But boy, then the magpies would show up and they'd run everybody off and hog the feeders for a while. Not even that hungry, it didn't seem like, and then fly off. And so what I'm wondering is, are magpies, is that typical magpie behavior? Do they have to, do they like to clear out the other species? Or, I mean, they were very loud. They were definitely my loudest sound today. So I don't know. I just thought I'd throw that out there in case you had any insight or ideas about what might be happening.
Right on. So does anyone know, do folks know what family the magpie's in? Anyone want to take a guess? Yeah, go ahead. I see your mouth moving, Jermaine. What do you think?
I was thinking crow.
Crow, so like the corvid family. Okay. Anyone else have a different opinion, or most people think crow? Corvid family? Some people don't even know. It's like, I don't know. Yeah, us Easterners, we don't have magpies out here, but in the West, you all do. I used to live with magpies in Colorado. They're awesome. I love watching them. I love learning from them. And so yeah, so they're in the corvid family, which is the same as the crows, the jays, ravens, and all the various different types of jays that there are. And when you think about sort of the hierarchy of, like, I don't know, toughness maybe, I'd say it goes jay, and there's certain jays that are tougher than other jays, especially, and again, you see that more in the West because you have more variety out there. So you have jays, and then you'd have magpies, who are a little bit bigger and tougher than the jays, and then you have the crows, who are a bit bigger and tougher than the magpies, and you have ravens, who are a bit bigger and tougher than the crows. And so there is a hierarchy there with the birds, and birds do respond to that. And so very similar to the way that jays will chase off, other birds from the feeder or from the area, the magpies do, but it's just a little different. I don't remember experiencing them being quite so thoughtful maybe, or methodical about, like where they would mimic like how jays can mimic, a hawk sound, for instance. I haven't heard the magpies do that per se, but just my sense is just their sheer presence, their size, their vociferousness, like it does sort of, I don't know if it necessarily scares the other birds, but who kind of wants to be around a bully? Again, I love magpies. I think that there's so many wonderful, wonderful things about them. But as far as birds go, to other birds, to like a chickadee or a junco or whatever, a magpie would be sort of like a bully or the big kid, that's just like, I don't know if I want to hang out with these guys. They sort of scare me, And especially now with the young ones, with all the birds having their young ones, they're a lot more cautious and protective. And so they wouldn't necessarily want the magpies to be around their kiddos. So if they have young ones, they would probably leave with them, That's my sense. Anyone else have different thoughts or different opinions or different experiences with magpies in your area? Not so much. If you've never gotten to see magpies, I hope if you ever go out west, you do, because they're just a really magical creature. And have you noticed, Linda, when you saw them today, did you notice if their tails were full length or were they shorter?
Well, I wondered about that. I not the tails, but I wondered if there were some young, but they all looked to be full length. The ones that I, got a good look at, they were flying around. They weren't just hanging out. They were flying around and going from tree to tree. It was almost like they were going from tree to tree to say, hi, I'm here now.
Yeah. Now you can go. Now you can leave. That's awesome. So for folks, just maybe folks don't know this, but in general, when a bird fledges or leaves a nest, so let's say it's been growing up, it's a little juvenile bird inside the nest, and then it leaves the nest, Does it have more growing to do? Is it the same size as an adult, or is it still kind of small? Is it going to be smaller than the adult? Again, in general, what do people think? What'd you
I
say?
they're,
Julia,
they're, I think they're generally the same size.
okay, so Claudia's the same size. Julia, I saw you make a guess, but we couldn't hear you.
I'd say they're smaller from my experience with blue jays.
With blue
But-
jays, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I see smaller from Sally. She texted in. Okay, Anne is saying small. I look at that, smaller. Okay, let's do that. Smaller or bigger? Smaller. Okay, yeah. So most birds, I wouldn't say all for sure, but most birds, when they're ready to leave the nest, they're the same size as an adult. The big difference is their plumage. So the plumage is going to be different. And for birds like the magpie, magpies have very long tails. So they're like a little bit bigger than a jay, but their tail is just super long. So it makes them look really big. But for young magpies, their tails are still really short. And so you can often tell a young magpie this time of year because its tail is really short and they can't balance so well. You know, the big magpies have their tail and they, you know, it helps them to kind of counterbalance themselves. But the young magpies and most young birds, when they land on a branch, they're sort of like still learning their balance and catching their balance. But that is something that, you know, I hear a lot of people say, oh, I found a baby bird and it just happened. It's like an adult bird, but it's just little, you know? And so it's just good to know that, that young birds, once they've left the nest, again, in general, they're the same size as adults. And sometimes they look smaller because they haven't gotten all their feathers yet. But their body size is going to be generally an adult size bird. There might be a tiny little bit of growing they have to do, but for the most part, they're the same size as the adults.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Linda, so much for that. Claudia, go for it.
Okay, so I've got a question then related to that. I was sitting here and normally it's like I've got two woodhouse jays who come to my backyard. But today, as I was watching, there were four, basically all perched together. And I was wondering if it could be some young.
Interesting. What were their vocalizations like?
What I'm used to hearing.
Uh-huh.
Didn't seem different. So would the younger have a different vocalization too?
In the beginning they do. Like I just heard a young jay out here this morning, and it was calling, like it's subtle. So that's the thing, is like that's part of the practice that we did today. It's really getting to know those ones that are in your neighborhood and like how well do we really know them, you know?
Yeah,
And
they had left by the time you had us listening for the differences.
Oh no, and it was no like judgment on you at all. I'm just saying that like this, it's great practice to start to listen, because I heard this jay this morning and I thought, I know it's a jay, it's an obvious jay sound, but there was something a little off with it, just a little off. And it was making it just sounded a bit more squeaky, maybe a little bit more whiny, you know, it really did sound like it was whining some more. And so their voices, again, depends on when you catch them. But once the parents of the corvid family start to kind of show their kids to the world, once they leave the nest with them, the kids will be vocalizing, and they tend to still have that begging sound, that like whining kind of begging sound. And so
thank you, I'll listen for that.
yeah, I'd be so curious to see what you end up hearing. Sorry, I was hearing something back over there. I was curious. There's I don't think that's who it is. I'm not sure what it is, but there I have a fox kid that comes by about once a day. She's one of the three. There was 3 fox pups, that two males and a female, and she's the one that keeps coming back every day. And so I'm hearing something. I don't know, maybe it's an insect. I don't know. Anyway, I was just curious if it might be her. Cool. Anyone else have a story they want to share from this morning? Or yeah, go for it, Julia.
Well, I had a cardinal in a tree pretty much above me, and there was one in the distance, and it seemed like they were having a conversation, because the one above me had 4 little whistles, tweet, 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 and the other one would pick up exactly the next beat at exactly the same speed and would respond. So it was just like one singing 8 times.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
second one would do 5 of them.
yeah.
And so I was wondering, because it could be 2 cardinals saying, this is my territory, and that one saying, that's my territory. But I wondered, because it was just picking up that same didn't miss a beat, just continued on. And so I thought, well, maybe it's a young one from the same family responding to the
Oh,
adult, say, this is how you do it. And it was learning.
like if it was learning. Yeah. How far away, the one that was in the distance, about how far away do you think that was?
Oh, probably two houses worth.
How big
Uh,
are your
yeah,
properties?
2 yards away from me, 2 or 3 yards away.
And how big is your property, would you say? Because that could be, if someone has 25 acres, that could be, so yeah.
Mine's a moderate city lot.
Okay. Okay.
The houses are not close together, but I don't have a lot of acreage in between. There's space in between the houses.
So before I offer my thoughts, what do people think? Do you think it's a related, do you think it's a different individual, like that has its own territory, given the distance she shared? Or do you think it could be a young or someone related to this cardinal that's in her yard? What do folks think?
Or
How big-
friends.
How big is a cardinal's territory?
What's that, Claudia?
How large is a cardinal's territory?
I'm asking you guys, what do you think? That's a great question. What do people think? How big, how far would a cardinal travel? Would it be about 2 city houses away? Or would it be, would that be its territory, or would that be a new individual, do you think? What do you think, Jermaine? I know you've got cardinals, yeah?
I don't know, I think it would be the same one.
The same one.
That'd be its territory.
Okay. Anyone else? Different thoughts? Yeah, I that distance is on the edge for me. My gut feeling is that it likely wouldn't be the young right now. Cardinals are so protective of their young, and even as mated pairs, they hardly ever leave each other's side. Like the male and female are always together, and they're sort of that way with their kids. They're just always together. Now, granted, like when the male could be one place and the female another place on the property singing. But usually they're very close together, and especially they're young. So I would think if it's going to be in the same sort of family, it wouldn't be the young, it might be the female. The way you described it did sound to me like two separate males, kind of counter singing with each other, sort of being like my territory, my territory, my territory, my territory. And I don't know, that's one of the ones, I moved here, like, was it 5 or 6 years ago? And so cardinals are like sort of new for me. We didn't have any out west where I was. And so I know that the females sing, and that's one of my goals, is to learn the distinction in the female song versus the male song. Because they are one of the species where the female is very vocal, and she sings and she will defend territory using her voice as well. So I don't know if it's different and unique from the males, like if she has her own sounds and he has his own sounds, or are they similar? So that's a really interesting question, Julia. I think it'd be worthwhile, like, just exploring that a little bit more, and just seeing, I'll keep listening and seeing if that one ever comes closer, or if yours ever goes over that way,
Mhm. Well, there seemed to be some relationship.
Yeah, something was going on with them, right?
It didn't sound adversarial to me. It could be the pair singing.
They can, but when, like when like a robin, for instance, sings to sort of proclaim its territory, it's going to sound beautiful to us. And then another robin next door is going to sing to proclaim its territory, and to us it will sound beautiful. And it's not that they're adversarial necessarily. It's not that they're going to sound aggressive. It's just like when you sing, this is claiming your space, So that is the proclamation, but it's not like a territorial aggressive fight or anything like that. Does that make sense? Yeah.
You're there, I'm here.
Yeah.
Got
As
it.
long as you stay over there, we're all good. You stay over there, we're good. Okay, great. Like, I'm in my space, you're in your space. If you come closer, not so good.
I think too, if there's a feeder involved,
Yeah.
that's going to change things. They're maybe a little bit more tolerant of each other.
That's interesting. I don't know, because I usually take mine down when the singing and all that kind of stuff starts to happen. So I've never seen them have you witnessed that, Jermaine?
I've seen both of them at the feeder at the same time, not two different ones. No, usually I have one pair.
One pair. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I'm not sure if, singing in the trees to each. I would think that it might have been a male and a female, but I don't know. I hear them a lot. I do hear them.
Yeah. A great place to look is go on Zeno Canto and some on there it's xeno-canto.org. And
Um,
Zeno Canto will have they should show you both male and female. Some of them will, some of them won't, but some of them will say male singing, some will say female singing, and you can start to listen for the distinctions. You might even just be able to Google it, and someone probably has like a blog post or something about female song versus male song in the cardinal. But that
I
would
was
be
just thinking that repetitive cardinal note is pretty typical, but I don't know if it's just typical of males.
right. Yeah, I don't either. I don't either. So it's worth exploring that one for sure. Yeah.
Well, the Connolly estate this week, we've had hatched phoebes over the front door in the electric awning. And the parents have been all this half an hour, I mean, nonstop feeding. It's been, and they've had things in their mouth, like huge globby looking
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
So I haven't heard, I mean, I think I heard the babies once, but they're pretty small at this point. They're only a few days old, but I'm sure they'll get noisier.
Absolutely. Did anybody hear anything in the sounds you were listening to this morning that was new for you, or that you were like, gosh, I've never thought of them this way, or I never sort of perceived this sound in this way? Yeah, Anne, go for it.
I just had hummingbirds and I didn't realize that I have two, a male and a female, but I don't usually sit here long enough. But the male comes to the feeder and he doesn't sit at the hummingbird feeder. He hovers to eat. And then when I stood up to stretch, I heard him fly back to the bush and something cheep. He flew, cheep, and then the female came and she sits. It could be a female or a juvenile. I didn't dare move, but it perched. But then it was really curious of any of the bees and stuff. And I was just that sound. I had never heard it before. I'd heard the hummingbirds buzz and cheep, but I never saw the effect. You know, when you hear these sounds and then, like you say, what's really going on here? What? And then I think he was telling her, the feeder's good now. The feeder's good now. You know, come on over, get a drink, you know. So I might have to look, see if we have a nest too.
High five. That is so
I know,
cool, Anne.
I know. But you have to do these things. You have to stop, because normally I'd be out here just turning the hose on, or, you know, lamenting the weeds that need to be picked, or, you know, but when I come out here, it makes me sit. So, and I wouldn't have experienced that without the focus.
Yeah, you're right. But
It's not, you know, normally you're hearing one sound from them buzz you or whatever, but that peeping, and he went back and forth, and then she showed up, or the juvenile. I'll have to, but
that's so exciting. Yeah, and well done, you know, because really that is how we start to pick them up, is just giving the attention to the sounds, you know. It's really easy to make everything our background noise, you know, like a screensaver for our ears or something like that. But yeah, when we start to turn our ears on and really give attention to the sounds, it takes something from us. Sometimes we have to be sitting still. It's awesome when you can start to like engage that practice as you move through the world. Even when you're talking to people, it's really kind of tricky, but it is possible to be listening and like listening to the birds and nature, and to be having conversations at the same time. We were, as humans, designed to do that, sort of in our own best interest, to know what's happening in the world around us, you know. But yeah, well done, Anne. That's awesome.
but
That's really
just, yeah, and maybe because I didn't even dare move my head to change the situation. Yeah,
well, I'm
but just
excited to hear if you end up finding if you have a nest or not.
we'll find out next week, I hope. So, you know,
Right
I'll
on.
have to pay more. I'll have to come out here, sit quietly more often here.
Yes. Sweet. Anyone else have a story from this morning? Yes, Claudia, go for it.
Can I tell a story that's not this morning?
Let me just see. Does anyone else have a this morning story that they want to share? And then we can move to it. Not so much. Okay, Claudia, go for it.
Okay, I just have to tell you, I'm so excited because last Wednesday I got to go owling and we found flammulated owls. was so fun.
Wow.
They're just little guys about the size, the way the guide described it was about the size of a smartphone.
Yeah.
And we
Can you
got
tell everybody where you're located or where you went to see?
I'm in Utah, so we were in the mountains above Salt Lake City.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and they were just up in this little forested hillside, and we could hear them, and they have a deep hoot. It sounds like a much bigger owl.
Hmm.
So there's this deep hoot, and it's hard to tell quite what the distance is, but they started out kind of farther away. And anyway, our tour guide played a recording of that he'd recorded actually in that same spot. Anyway, and they moved in.
Yeah.
And so we did get to see two of them. It was so exciting. I guess they're pretty hard to spot usually.
Yeah. Yeah. Was that an evening venture? Or
It was night. It
dusk?
was about like 9:30.
Okay. Yep.
Yep. So
Wow,
after,
that's wonderful.
yeah,
How exciting.
it was really fun.
Yeah, especially to go with someone who knows where to find them, knows how to find them. That
That's
makes,
what we needed. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so good.
Well,
Oh, and I've got a quick question.
Sure.
Anybody know what this egg is? What kind of egg that
Could you
is?
hold it a little bit closer to the camera? And
If I can get it.
is there any speckles on it? It's hard to see.
No speckles.
It's teeny, huh?
And it's cracked, so pretty well empty.
Where'd you find it?
It was just here on the ground here in my yard, beneath a tree, but I wasn't aware of any nests. I was wondering if a jay picked it up, would they have carried a whole egg somewhere? Maybe it fell out of the tree. I don't know.
There's no speckles on it?
No speckles.
Okay. What do anyone
Just
have?
white.
Do folks have thoughts or ideas? So quite often, this isn't always, but often birds who are cavity nesters have white eggs because they don't have them camouflaged. So a bird like a chickadee, I'm trying to think of other ones maybe in your area.
It's pretty big, you can see. It's
a decent size. Yeah, it looks bigger than a chickadee. But you can think about what cavity nesters would be in your area. Woodpeckers are cavity nesters. But there's a couple great field guides out right now. There's the Peterson's Field Guide to Bird Nests. Actually, some of my friends wrote that book just like a year or two. Well, they wrote it before then, but by the time it got published, it was a year or two ago. That's a good one. But there's another one that's one of my favorite. It's called like Nests, Eggs, and something or other. But they have pictures of all the different eggs, and they typically do them by real actual size. And then if they're not if it's an ostrich egg or something, I don't think they have in that book, but let's say it's a real eagle egg, they would tell you, oh, this is times 2, reduced by half or whatever. So you can get a sense, but an egg like that, they would have the actual size. So you can go and look in those guides and just sort of, figure out, but it's a good thing. Just again, color of the egg, helps a lot to sort of start to narrow it down. And just
I hadn't thought about that it would be a bird that would have its nest totally hidden that would have a white egg.
Right, because there's no reason for camouflage, if it's like deep inside of a tree cavity or something like that. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. That's a fun mystery. Yeah. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks. If this is anyone's first time, thanks for joining us. And we do this every week, same time, same place. You're always welcome to come and ask questions and whatever. Just hang out with us, play along. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week. And I hope you all have a beautiful, beautiful week.
Thank you, Kristi. That was very good.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Have a great holiday.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.